A man spent 2 years hunting his own student. His student spent 2 years convinced his mentor had turned traitor, had abandoned the country, joined the enemy, and started killing the people he once swore to protect. They were both being played, and the person playing them had been standing in the room the entire time. The operation should have been straightforward. A senior intelligence operative named Naidu had been tracking a terrorist named Fareed Haqqani for months. A recruiter, a man responsible for pulling civilians into networks that eventually got them killed. The order to eliminate him came down cleanly. The agent assigned to carry it out was Kabir Dhaliwal, one of the most decorated field operatives in Indian intelligence, a man whose record had been built over years of doing things nobody else was willing to do. Kabir took the shot. The bullet did not hit Fareed Haqqani. It hit Naidu. Then Kabir fired again, and Naidu was dead. By the time anyone pieced together what had happened, the recording Naidu had been watching turned out to have been pre-recorded 3 days earlier and placed there deliberately. Naidu had been watching a ghost, while the real situation had already concluded around him. The next morning, Colonel Sunil Luthra stood in front of his superiors and delivered a report nobody in that room wanted to hear. One of their best field operatives had apparently gone rogue. The man who had spent years dismantling terrorist networks had apparently decided to join one. Sunil was asked who could bring Kabir in. He had one name. Khalid Rahmani had been trained personally by Kabir. He had studied under him, fought alongside him, and understood the way Kabir thought with the specific intimacy that only exists between a mentor and a student who paid close enough attention. If anyone could track Kabir across international borders and bring him back alive, it was the one person Kabir himself had built from the ground up. Khalid was pulled off his current assignment and brought to headquarters. When Sunil laid out the situation, Khalid did not hesitate. He said that Kabir was faster and smarter than anyone else on the force, and that the only way to anticipate his next move was to think the way he had been taught to think. He asked for command of the operation. Sunil gave it to him. What neither of them said out loud was how personal this already was. 2 years earlier, when Kabir had first been asked to bring Khalid onto his team, his answer had been no, not because of Khalid's file, which was exceptional, or his test results, which were among the best the program had produced. The reason was that Kabir had killed Khalid's father. Khalid's father had been a terrorist. Kabir had been the agent who found him. The intelligence that led to that operation had come from Khalid's own mother, who had made a decision that cost her family everything: their reputation, their safety, their ability to walk through their own neighborhood without people looking at them the way people look at something they consider contaminated. Khalid stood in front of Kabir and told him that his father deserved what happened to him. He said his mother had surrendered everything for the chance to restore what his father had destroyed, and that he intended to finish what she had started. He asked for the chance to prove it. Kabir put him on the team. Their first major target together was Rizwan Ilyasi, a name that appeared across enough intelligence files to constitute a small library on its own. A man who specialized in finding people at the edges of desperation and turning them into weapons. Recruiters, financiers, and logistics operators all moved underneath him without most of them knowing whose structure they were actually serving. Getting to Rizwan required going through his second-in-command first, a man named Bashir Hasib, operating out of Iraq, surrounded by people whose loyalty had been purchased and would therefore hold under exactly as much pressure as it took to make letting go feel like the better option. The approach was deliberate. Kabir allowed himself to be captured. Let Bashir's people bring him in. Let them run their interrogation routine. Let them find the transmitter in his shoe and believe they had resolved the problem. Then he produced a second one from his mouth and told them calmly that in 30 minutes they would not have time to process what was coming. He was accurate on the timing. Khalid came through the perimeter with enough force to end the conversation quickly. What followed was the kind of fight that happens when both sides have capable people and no clean angles. Sustained, damaging, and conclusive only after Bashir himself entered it and discovered that two people thinking the same way at the same time are a different problem from one. They brought him down and got what they needed about Rizwan. Then the operation to arrest Rizwan fell apart from the inside. Someone on the team had passed the raid location ahead of time. The target knew they were coming before they arrived. The traitor turned out to be a team member named Sarab, identified during the chaos of the collapsed operation, during which Rizwan shot Kabir and Khalid chased Sarab into circumstances that ended without a body being recovered. Kabir woke up in a hospital and asked one question before anything else. Sunil told him Khalid was dead. Kabir asked whether they had found a body. They had not. He filed the detail, said nothing more about it, and was discharged. Now, in the present, Kabir was the one being hunted. He was working through targets methodically, Naidu first, then a major on a military aircraft, and the pattern was not random. Each target operated under a code name within Rizwan's network: the pawn, the elephant, the bishop, the minister. 4 positions built into Indian institutions, using people with access, leverage, and enough self-interest to make the arrangement feel like a reasonable risk. Kabir called Khalid's phone directly. He asked whether Khalid had forgotten who taught him everything he knew. Khalid said what he had been taught was patriotism, and that he wanted to understand how the man who taught it had ended up killing the people he once protected. Kabir told him he would be dead before he found out, and ended the call. The next time they were in the same space was a train compartment. Brief, controlled, deliberately chosen by Kabir. He gave Khalid a choice: the reason behind everything, or the name of the next target. The train reached a station before Khalid could act on either, but Kabir gave him the name anyway before stepping off. Dr. Utpal Biswas. 6 months before any of this, Kabir had been running a different kind of operation entirely. A woman named Naina performed at large events, visible, in demand, and closely followed by a businessman named Feroz Contractor, who had been trying to get close to her for longer than was professionally explainable. Feroz was a useful man if you needed access to Rizwan's network, because Feroz knew things that people with his kind of money accumulate without fully understanding the weight of carrying them. Kabir built a relationship with Naina deliberately. He got close to her because getting close to Feroz required it, and because intelligence work at this level does not stop for what develops in the middle of it. What he did not account for was that something did develop, and once it did, he stopped being entirely honest with himself about what the operation was costing her. Through Feroz, Kabir confirmed what the files had suggested. Rizwan's network inside India ran through 4 people, and eliminating the network meant identifying and removing all 4 before Rizwan could replace them and disappear again. He told Naina the truth about who he was and what he needed. He asked her to copy files from Feroz's laptop onto a drive during an event where she would have access. She agreed because she trusted him, and because people who trust completely rarely spend enough time calculating the cost of being wrong. Feroz walked in while she was copying the files. Kabir heard the shot through her transmitter before anyone told him what had happened. He went through the building's security with the specific urgency of someone who already knows what they are going to find, and goes anyway. He found her transmitter still active in an empty room. He was too late. Everything that followed had that moment as its origin point. Kabir had not gone rogue. He had built a parallel operation against Rizwan's network because that network ran through the official chain of command, and working through a compromised structure to dismantle the same structure was not a strategy. It was a guarantee of failure. Naidu had been the elephant. He had been embedded inside the operation designed to catch the network the entire time. On Christmas, Khalid found Kabir at the home of a young girl, Naina's daughter, who had been asking for her mother for months and had been told only that she was coming soon. Khalid sat down across from him. They talked without weapons between them for the first time since any of this started. Kabir laid out the full architecture, the 4 targets, the drive that Utpal Biswas was holding, which contained the encrypted data and access codes that pointed directly to Rizwan. 3 of the 4 were already gone. The minister was the last door before Rizwan himself. Sunil's soldiers arrived before they could finish the conversation. Kabir and Khalid fought their way out and went to ground with a former team member named Aditi. Kabir handed the drive to Khalid and told him to secure it. That evening, Khalid poured him a drink and set it in front of him. Kabir picked it up. He should not have. The twist did not arrive loudly. It arrived in the silence between Kabir losing consciousness and being thrown into the water, and in that silence the previous 2 years rearranged themselves into a shape that had been accurate from the beginning, just carefully kept out of view. Khalid Rahmani had actually died on the day Saurabh chased him. That part of the story was real. What came after was not. Rizwan Ilyasi had not been using the name Feroz Contractor casually. He was Feroz Contractor. He had taken a new identity after the failed operation, rebuilt his position inside the city, and placed himself at the center of the social world Kabir was already investigating. Saurabh had done the same. New face, new file, reinserted into the structure as the agent leading the mission to find Kabir, the man everyone in the room believed was Khalid Rahmani. The pawn had been running the operation against itself the entire time. Kabir had known before the drink. The detail that broke it open was the shooting. Khalid had always pulled right, a permanent flaw from an injury absorbed in childhood. consistent across years of training and fieldwork, the kind of damage that does not correct itself under pressure. During the firefight at Aditi's location, every shot had landed cleanly. A man with that documented flaw does not suddenly shoot straight when the stakes are highest. The body does not forget what happened to it. That was not Khalid. Kabir had taken the antidote before the glass was poured. The drive he handed over had a transmitter inside it. He had let the plan proceed because, following it to its conclusion, was the only route to Rizwan that did not require guessing. And Rizwan had been the reason all of this started long before Naina's name entered the story. In a facility near Antarctica, aboard a ship loaded with missiles aimed at Indian satellite systems, Saurabh handed the drive across to the man he still addressed as Feroz and reported that the last obstacle had been cleared. Kabir walked in. The missile was redirected before it reached its target. Saurabh and Kabir ended the chase inside a church, the same kind of final accounting that tends to follow when a student who learned an entire discipline from one teacher meets that teacher without the cover of a false identity to hide behind. Kabir had built Saurabh's capabilities. He knew every strength, every habit, every pattern that training leaves in a person's body long after the conscious mind has moved on. It was not a long fight. Rizwan was eliminated on the same operation. Sunil met with Kabir afterward and delivered the terms without sentiment. As far as the official record was concerned, Kabir Dhaliwal was dead. He would remain outside India in an unspecified capacity until he was required again. It was the particular kind of ending that this kind of work produces for the people who do it without flinching. Not a ceremony, not a return, just the knowledge that the thing was finished, and an instruction to be somewhere else before anyone began asking how. Khalid's mother was awarded the Veer Chakra, the designation that had followed her family since the day she turned in her husband. The decision that had shaped Khalid's entire life and driven him toward a career built entirely around restoring what she had given up, was formally removed in front of people who understood the weight behind the paperwork. She had asked, when Khalid last visited her, not for her son's safety but for respect. That was what she received. Naina's daughter waited with the particular patience of a child who has been told someone is coming and has not yet learned to read the silences between visits for what they actually mean. And that is how the most protected terrorist network in the country was finally dismantled. Not through the official operation assembled to find it, not through the chain of command that had been quietly compromised at every level, but through one man who lost someone he cared about and decided that the only acceptable response was to work backwards from that loss until there was nothing left of the architecture that caused it.